In the dark forests of North America, countless people have claimed to see something extraordinary, a towering, hair-covered figure moving silently through the trees. Many of these stories come from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, or BFRO, a database collecting real eyewitness encounters from across the country. These reports, often from hunters and hikers, tell of brief, chilling moments when the ordinary turned unexplainable. Tonight, we'll explore several of those mysterious encounters from the 1970s and 1980s, strange true stories that continue to fuel the legend of Bigfoot. If you enjoy stories like these, please like, subscribe, and join us for more journeys into the unknown. Oregon Fall Encounter, near Mount Hood, 1970. In the fall of 1970, near the Mount Hood National Wilderness area in Oregon, a 15-year-old boy was deer hunting with his father and neighbor. He sat on a large stump watching a meadow bordered by dense Douglas firs when a sudden rustling drew his attention. Expecting to see his father running, he instead saw a large, powerful figure sprint through the brush. The way it moved was unlike any human or known animal, silent and graceful despite its size. Moments later, his actual father appeared alongside him on the trail, exhausted and tired, proving the creature was not his father at all. The boy later realized what he saw was far larger and stranger than anything he had encountered in the woods before. Morning sightings south of Yoncalla, Oregon, 1980. In October 1979, 3 brothers and a friend were exploring logging roads south of Yoncalla, Oregon, when they spotted something unusual on a distant mountaintop. At first unnoticed, a massive dark figure came into view, walking upright like a human. After a moment, a smaller creature appeared beside the larger one. The 2 figures stood and looked in their direction for 30 seconds before moving away over the ridge. The main witness estimated the larger creature at about 6 to 7 feet tall and heavily built, with long arms and muscular posture. The brothers were shaken by the encounter and later shared their story locally, noting that residents were unwilling to speak openly about what might be out there. Hillside sighting between Oakland and Sutherland, Oregon, 1980. In September of 1980, a young hiker and his girlfriend stopped on a forest trail between Oakland and Sutherland, Oregon. As he walked a short distance, he heard a loud crashing sound from a steep embankment ahead. Looking up, he saw a dark, upright creature moving rapidly downhill through the trees, taking huge steps. At first he cried out, "Bear!" but then realized it was not a bear and certainly not a human. The creature walked upright with long strides, crashing through brush and foliage in a manner unlike any animal he had seen in the wild. The encounter left both hikers startled and fleeing in the opposite direction. Storm Beach Beast at Fort Stevens, Oregon, late winter 1978 to 79. One winter afternoon in the late 1970s, a witness and his dog stood atop an observation tower overlooking the beach near Fort Stevens State Park in Clatsop County, Oregon. Despite a storm pounding the shoreline, the witness spotted a man-like figure walking down from a grassy dune onto the open sands. The figure stood upright, at least 8 feet tall, and briefly waved its arms toward the crashing surf before striding away toward the dunes and disappearing. The witness later inspected the disturbed sand where the figure had walked, but by the time he reached it, only the wind and tide remained. In October 1980, 2 brothers were out exploring near Yoncalla, Oregon, on a cool fall morning when they noticed something moving on a nearby mountaintop. At first they thought it might be wildlife, but as the large, dark shape came closer into view, it became clear they were watching a bipedal creature walking upright. It moved slowly but unmistakably like a human in posture and gait. What made the sighting stranger was that at one point the larger creature stopped and stood still, and beside it was a smaller, upright figure, a sight the brothers would never forget. The encounter lasted nearly half a minute before the pair walked off the ridge and disappeared into the timber. Logging road break, sighting between Sutherland and Oakland, 1980. During the fall of 1980, A teenager and a friend paused during a hike along logging roads outside Sutherland, Oregon. While one took a break, the other scanned ahead and suddenly witnessed an upright creature crash down a steep embankment toward the road. It moved quadrupedally only momentarily before adopting an upright bipedal gait, thudding heavily down the slope. Its steps were loud and powerful, each followed by the crashing of brush. Terrified, both witnesses ran in opposite directions, later speculating that what they saw was not a bear or cougar, but something entirely different. A large, hair-covered figure, unlike any animal native to the region. Michigan Daylight Bigfoot Sighting, Monroe County, 1980. In the fall of 1980, a man went squirrel hunting in the woods near Luna Pier, Michigan. The morning was cool and quiet when he suddenly spotted something just a short distance away in a patch of brush. There, only a few yards from his position, stood a very large, upright creature, covered in dark hair and broad in build. The witness estimated the creature at well over 6 feet tall, with long limbs and a shape that did not match any known animal in the area. It watched him for several moments before it turned and disappeared soundlessly into the woods. No tracks were found, but the image of that figure remained vivid in his memory decades later. This sighting was reported to the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization as a Class A encounter, meaning multiple details were given and the witness was deemed credible. The Big Johnstown Print, Pennsylvania, 1980. On August 26, 1980, in the Conemaugh Township area near Johnstown, Pennsylvania, residents were puzzled when a massive footprint was discovered near a home. The print measured nearly 17 3/4 inches long and 7.5 inches wide, and appeared in soft ground near the mud, with a second imprint found several feet away. Neighbors also reported strange noises the night before, and a very unusual strong odor lingering in the area. The case was unusual enough that it was covered by the Associated Press in contemporary news reports and discussed for weeks among locals, though no definitive explanation was ever established. All that's interesting. Highway crossing creature, Brooklyn, Michigan, 1980. In November 1980, a 19-year-old college student was a passenger in a car heading home near Brooklyn, Michigan. As they rounded a rural stretch of the M50 highway, a large, bipedal creature suddenly crossed the road in front of them. The animal was hairy, upright, and moved with remarkable speed, disappearing into the woods within seconds. The witness and his two companions were stunned into silence, their minds racing to identify the bizarre figure. Later, upon recounting the incident, they realized the movement and gait were unlike any human or known animal they had seen, reinforcing the strangeness of the experience. This event was later documented in the BFRO database, with details of the creature's size and movement. Iowa Backyard Encounter, near Des Moines, 1979 to 1980. In the spring of 1980, in a suburb near the Des Moines River in Iowa, a family had a startling encounter that began in the early morning. Around 1:30 a.m., the household dogs began whining and barking at something beyond the backyard. Peering out the kitchen window toward a nearby cornfield and swamp, the family and neighbors saw a large, slow-moving shape just outside the range of the porch light. Although the lighting was poor, the size and slow gait suggested an animal unlike a human or typical wildlife. Neighbors' big dogs tried repeatedly to engage the unseen figure, but were forcefully repelled each time. Though the report was never widely published, it was later recorded in the BFRO database with follow-up interviews indicating the witnesses were still convinced something unusual was present. Ohio Creekside Sighting, Ross County, 1980. During the summer of 1980, a father, his son, and their cousin were fishing in Deer Creek, near Chillicothe, Ohio, when a foul smell suddenly filled the air, a stench unlike ordinary mud or decay. As they looked up the bank, what they first took for a dead tree began to shift. Hair moved in the breeze, and a tall, hairy figure rose amid the brush, estimated at roughly 8 feet tall, thickly built, and watching them. The men scrambled away in fear, but not before the creature turned its head and looked directly at them. Later, other locals reported that horses had been spooked in the same area around the same time, backing up the idea that something unusual had been present in the woods. Reference: BFRO, New Jersey Swamp Sightings, mid-1970s. In the mid-1970s, remote swamps and woodlands of New Jersey became the backdrop for a series of strange sightings. Residents of small communities reported large, unknown figures lurking at the edges of swamps and dense forest, often accompanied by odd noises and lingering smells. Many locals were reluctant to speak publicly, but the pattern was clear enough that stories passed quietly among hunters, fishermen, and rural families. These accounts may never have made front-page news at the time, but they have been preserved in regional cryptid lore and shared in later decades among BFRO researchers and local historians. Reference: Facebook, Arkansas Fook Monster Reports, early 1970s. In the early 1970s, rural Arkansas was gripped by reports of a creature later dubbed the Fook Monster, a large bipedal hairy figure seen by multiple eyewitnesses around the small town of Fook. Reports described a creature estimated at up to 7 feet tall, sometimes observed at close range and accompanied by tracks and a terrible odor, unlike known wildlife. Local newspapers covered these events extensively at the time, and the stories were compelling enough to inspire a docudrama film that brought national attention to the events. Although interest faded by the mid-1970s, sporadic sightings and tracks continued to be reported into the late decade. Father, son, and cousin encounter along Deer Creek, Ohio, 1980. One summer afternoon in 1980, a father, his son, and their cousin were wading and fishing in Deer Creek near Chillicothe, Ohio, when something unusual interrupted their quiet day. As they made their way downstream, a sudden, indescribable stench filled the air, catching their attention. Thinking it was mud or river rot, they soon realized the smell was far worse, like something decaying in the sun mixed with rotten eggs. Looking toward the creek bank, the father spotted what he first assumed was a dead tree snag, but then he saw hair moving in the breeze. They watched in disbelief as a large, reddish-brown hairy figure, roughly 8 feet tall, stood motionless among the brush, watching them. Before they could fully process what they were seeing, the creature turned its head and stared directly at them. Terrified, they scrambled up the bank and hurried to their car, shaken by their unexpected encounter with a creature they could not identify. Daylight Railroad Track Sighting, Athens County, Ohio, 1980. In July of 1980, 3 college students from Athens County, Ohio, were returning to their dorm late one evening after grabbing snacks in town. As they walked along the railroad tracks near Hocking Technical College, they noticed a dark silhouette cross the tracks ahead of them. At first they thought it might be a person, but as they closed the distance, a foul odor of wet dogs filled the air. Only 10 to 15 feet away, the students saw a large, upright creature with eyes reflecting in the moonlight. The figure was at least 7 feet tall and covered in dark hair. Terrified, they dropped their groceries and ran back toward the dorm. Later that night, an article in the local newspaper reported multiple sightings in the area, giving some context to their startling encounter. Woodcutter's Close Daylight Sighting, Idaho, 1980. On October 28, 1980, a woodcutter was driving down a logging road east of Nordman, Idaho, when something ahead caught his eye. As he rounded a curve, he saw a large, upright creature sliding down an embankment, standing fully on its feet. What followed was a moment that would stay with him for decades. For 20 to 30 seconds, the witness watched the creature, estimated at well over 6 feet tall, walking alongside and then in front of his pickup truck. It showed no fear of the vehicle's presence and moved in a manner unlike any animal native to the area. After the encounter, the witness described the experience in detail to investigators, noting the creature's powerful stride and the clarity of the daylight sighting. 3 students spot upright creature, Ohio 1980. Another Ohio encounter in the summer of 1980 involved 3 college students out late one night. Walking near the railroad bridge at Nelsonville, they noticed movement just off the tracks. It was hot and still when a dark silhouette crossed their path, its shape unmistakably upright and non-human. As they watched in stunned silence, the creature passed only a few yards away, causing the hairs on the back of their necks to stand on end. The witness estimated the figure at around 7 feet tall, with hair dark in color and a broad build. Terrified, they hurried back to their dormitory, shaken by one of the most vivid sightings any of them had ever experienced. The hollow screams of Lesage, West Virginia, 1960. In the fall of about 1960, 3 generations of hunters, a grandfather, his grandson, and a family friend named Bill, were coon hunting in a rugged hollow near Lesage, West Virginia. They had descended into a dense thicket, dogs leading the way, when their hounds suddenly became unusually agitated, growling and raising the hair on their backs, refusing to go forward. Their behavior was unlike anything the men had seen in the woods before. The deeper they went, the more uneasy the dogs became, growling into the darkness ahead of them. As the hunters climbed a steeper section of the hollow, nearly 80 to 100 yards ahead, an eerie sound erupted from the darkness. A blood-curdling howl that started as a deep rumble and climbed into a high, shrieking scream, lasting 6 or 7 seconds. The volume was astonishing, powerful enough to echo through the rugged terrain and freeze everyone in place. The witness later said it was the most terrifying sound he had ever heard, loud enough that he felt it in his bones and tasted adrenaline in his mouth. After a tense moment, the group cautiously continued onward toward the ridge, their firearms and wits at the ready. Soon they heard a deep, low growl, a long, low rumble that seemed almost communication-like, and later, another scream from behind them as if something was warning them away. Throughout the ordeal, the dogs cowered beside their feet, terrified, except for a young pup who trotted off into the darkness toward the sound before returning. The grandfather was a lifelong woodsman who had never heard anything like it. They had no clear visual on a creature that night, but the extraordinary vocalizations and the dog's behavior etched the experience into their memories. To this day, the witness describes the screams and rumbles as unlike any animal known to inhabit those woods, loud, resonant, and haunting.